understand by definition, Bill, when somebody is attacking our compound, that's an act of terror, which is how I characterized it the day after it happened. So the question ends up being who, in fact, was attacking us.
But it's more than that, though, because of Susan Rice.
No.
It's more than that, because Susan Rice goes out and tells the world that it was a spontaneous demonstration off a videotape, but your commanders and the Secretary of Defense know it's a terror attack. Just as an American, I'm just confused.
And I'm trying to explain it to you if you want to listen. The fact of the matter is that people understood at the time something very dangerous was happening, that we were focused on making sure that we did everything we could to protect them. In the aftermath, what became clear was that the security was lax.
And it goes on, Bill O'Reilly's interview with President Obama before the Super Bowl. You can see more of that interview, by the way, tonight. Another 12 minutes with Bill O'Reilly starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. On Benghazi, it does contradict some of the Senate intelligence report, run, of course, by Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein. Here's what Senator Lindsey Graham had to say about all of this.
How could our president be telling the American people weeks after about a protest that never existed? Either he's the most detached president in the entire world, not curious at all about what actually happened, or this is part of an overall effort by the White House to mislead the American people 7 weeks before an election.
And now there's new information from Catherine Herridge tonight about the role of Mike Morrell, the CIA's former deputy director and then acting director, and how he may have factored into the talking points. Let's bring in our panel. Syndicated columnist George Will, Kirsten Powers, USA Today columnist, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. George.
Well, the president, who talks incessantly, talks increasingly a kind of rhetorical cotton candy, a flurry of adjectives that nullify the substance, as when he said to Bill O'Reilly, if you look at the video of the attack on the compound, you will see that it was not a systematic, well-organized process. Well, if you look at any war, any episode, it doesn't look systematic and well-organized. It looks like war and chaos. But as we've seen, we had a memo sent, I think, to all of us by James Rosen this afternoon saying if you look at the book written on this, Under Fire, the authors of that say the attackers knew the layout of the compound, knew where Ambassador Stevens was, knew where the gasoline was stored that they used to burn the place down, and used military hand signals to direct their operations. In other words, it looked to them systematic and well organized.
Kirsten, a lot of people push back and say, to use a phrase, what difference does it make now? Mm-hmm. What about that thinking and the reporting on this?
Well, I think the reporting is important, and I don't understand why the administration can't just tell the truth about this, and that they keep saying things that, as George just pointed out, we know aren't true, and we know aren't true from sort of unbiased sources. I mean, the Senate intelligence report is not, Fox News. He wants to blame Fox News for everything. It's not Fox News. You have people, reasonable people thinking that this is not what happened. I also thought it was interesting that he's talking about why couldn't he just answer Bill's question? Bill just kept asking him, what were you told? And he never really would answer the question. And then he turns around and says, well, we were just focused on getting people safe. Well, of course you were. But weren't you also a little curious if it was a terrorist attack? So none of this really adds up. And it's so frustrating every time we have to hear, as rhetorical cotton candy, perfect way to describe it.
Now there is this new element about Mike Morrell's role, the former deputy director of the CIA, went on to become acting director. And this email in the Senate Intel report, Charles, that is very critical and says the attacks from the station chief on the ground were not an escalation of protests. And to hear people describe this was to directly tell Morrell that this was not a protest.
And 2 days earlier, apparently, there was a video conference involving that same station chief and Morrell and Gregory Hicks, who was the #2 in Libya, in Tripoli, the guy who said that when he watched our ambassador at the UN, Susan Rice, when he watched her testimony on the 5 networks, his jaw dropped because it wasn't close to being true. So Morrell is hearing from the station chief and from Hicks that there was no demonstration. and then he gets the memo saying there was no demonstration. And yet he's the one who inserts the demonstration into the talking points. And he's the one who removes the word Al-Qaeda from the talking points. And when Obama talks about this as if he didn't know, I think he simply is continuing a successful Stonewall. The idea with the Stonewall until Election Day, the mainstream media had no interest in this. There's a huge cast of characters. It's a complicated event, and no one is talking about it. And he has succeeded now. He talks around it. He talks in a way that is not answering the question, did he know it was a terror attack? He obviously knew, because he met the afternoon of that day with General Ham, who said he knew with the Secretary of Defense, who had just spoken with General Ham, our commander in Africa, who said he knew within 15 minutes it was a terror attack. He knew, he pretends he doesn't, and he has succeeded in not getting the opprobrium he should as a result of that.
What did you make of the Hillary Clinton tweet about it's fun to watch Fox with someone else getting blitzed and sacked during the game and after the interview?
Well, they have this Fox derangement syndrome. I don't know what's worrying them so much. I mean, we knew, really, as a reasonable surmise, that the preposterous story about the attack being a movie review that went bad was conditioned by the 2012 presidential campaign. What we now learn, and this is relevant to Hillary Clinton, is that the whole thing might have been also part of the 2016 campaign, because Mr. Morrell, as Fox has reported today, seems to have an attachment to Hillary Clinton.
Last thing, why is this important now in the big picture? I mean, there are a lot of people who are very interested. They want to get to the bottom of it. There are people calling for a joint select committee. But there are a lot of people, Kirsten, who say, you know, why is this important?
Well, I guess I'm in the camp of the truth matters. And when you have people who were misleading, you know, you could say misleading, I might say lying about things. I think that it's important to get to the bottom of it. And look, people died here. This involves our national security. It involves, you know, people who have just really, I think, misled the American people, and I think they should be held accountable for that. And I wish that we held more people accountable for other things.
I asked that question as someone who gets that question on email and Twitter, but obviously 4 Americans died, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya.
Also because they wanted to dissimulate, to pretend it was the video. You get Obama going to the UN, making a speech in which he talks about the video. You get the American Secretary of State apologizing to the world over the video. It becomes the excuse, it becomes the lens through which the world sees it, when in fact there was a story invented as a way to deflect the problems that had happened leading up to it, the lack of security, and the fact that there was no response at the time. It was done for political reasons. Once you corrupt the process of explaining what happens, and it's a serious thing, first assassination of an American ambassador in 3 decades, once it's corrupted, it has effects even beyond our domestic politics and presidential politics. It's our announcement to the world, well, our ambassador is killed, but after all, an American citizen had produced a video that made people extremely angry.
Next up, healthcare, the IRS, the rest of the O'Reilly interview after a quick break.